everyone, and welcome back, friends at home. Here we are at the Summer Reading Kickoff 2014, where the theme for summer reading is what? What's our theme? Louder, fizz, boom. Again. Fizz, boom, read. One more time. Fizz, boom, read. All right, and we're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Our first performer is Mr. Hartman. He is a fabulous entertainer. You may know him from last year, and I know he's visited some of your schools as well. He is here tonight performing Joe Majorak, Man of Steel. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Tim Hartman. I'm a storyteller for the Pittsburgh Children's Museum. And today I'm going to do a show for you called Joe Majorak, Man of Steel. But before I get started, I give a couple of rules, and they're really simple rules. If you can follow these rules, we're going to have a great time. Rule number 1. Sometimes people like to talk during a show like this, but there's really a time for me to talk. It's not really a time for you to talk, so if you can stay as quiet as you can, that'd be great. But I know things happen. You may see something in the show you like. Or you might see something in the show you hate. Or you might see something in the show you don't understand. Or you just might turn to the person next to you and say something like, "That big guy's sweating like a dog." Okay. I know stuff like that happens, but if it gets so noisy that I can't hear and you can't hear, well, there's no telling the story to anybody that way. So here's the rule. If things get a little noisy, I will simply raise my hand. And when I raise my hand, that means please just get as quiet, as fast as you can, so I can keep the story going, if that's okay. All right? The second rule is this. This is a participation program. And in a participation program, that means that some of you are going to be able to come up here and help me do what I do. There is a rule that goes along with that as well, though. I'll say something like, "Boy, I could really use some help up here. Who would like to help me? If you want to help me, what are you going to do?" Okay, good. Hands down. Here's the thing. I know people get excited. And so instead of just sitting there like this, some people do this. And I'm sorry, but when I see like a third grade boy going, all I can think is, hey, that kid's underwear is too tight. And since I really can't help you with that problem, I will promise you something. I promise you the people I choose to come up here will be those people who remain seated, who simply raise their hands, and who don't make a sound. Okay? So if you're going, I will not pick you. If you're going, hey! Pick me! No, I will not pick you because you're scary. I will only pick the very quietest people. Think you can handle that? Yes! Are you ready? Yes! Pittsburgh town, the smoky old town, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh town, the smoky old town, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh town, the smoky old town. There's steel on top, there's coal underground. Pittsburgh, oh yeah, Pittsburgh. Yeah, I know what you're thinking to yourself. Hey, that's a stupid song. You know, really, why would I come to Bethel Park, to your library, and sing that Pittsburgh town's a stinky town? I mean, Pittsburgh's nice, right? We've got the nice rivers, and the pretty parks, and the beautiful buildings, and the nice museums. Isn't it kind of rude to sing that Pittsburgh is stinky and smoky? Well, here's the thing. The song that I just sang you wasn't written today. You know, when Pittsburgh was nice. The song I just sang you was written like 75 years ago. It was written by a guy named Woody Guthrie. Yeah. Oh, he also, he wrote that song, "This land is your land, this land is my land, from California." He wrote that song too. And what had happened when he was riding on a train, And he was riding on a train, playing his guitar. And the train went through Pittsburgh. And as it was coming through Pittsburgh, he looked out the window. Instead of seeing nice rivers and pretty bridges and beautiful buildings and the lovely, happy people, he saw smoke and fire and smog and dirt. What? He saw nothing that we see today, because you see, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, Pittsburgh was known as the Steel City. And in the Steel City, in every valley, there was something called a steel mill. And in a steel mill, they make steel. And when you make steel, you need fire. And when you have lots of fire, you have lots of smoke. They said that sometimes people would walk out of their houses in the middle of the day, and it would look like it was midnight, because that's how much smoke was in the air. My dad went to school in Pittsburgh when he was a little boy. And every day, before he went to school, he walked to school, he would take a little white handkerchief, place it on his nose, because he had a big schnoz. He placed it over his nose and his mouth, and by the time he got to school, his little white handkerchief would be gray and brown and black, because that's how much smoke and dirt was in the air. Yeah, Pittsburgh was a stinky, smelly town. 50 years ago, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, back when people like Steve Mestovich lived in Pittsburgh. Hey, I can't play Steve Mestovich because I'm telling the story, so I kind of need someone to play Steve Mestovich for me. So any volunteers to play the main character of this story, Steve Mestovich? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah? You want to do it? Come up here. Come up here. You're perfect. It's perfect. Great. Okay, yeah. Nice. Hey, how are you? What's your name? Nice to meet you. Okay, good. So face the audience, and you are now Steve Mestovich, okay? And let me tell you some stuff about Steve Mestovich. He was proud of two things. Number one, when he was a young man, he was the strongest man in the steel making. Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah. Don't pop. Whatever you do, don't pop. Okay, good, good. Good. Now, face the audience. Here you go. This is the deal, though. The story doesn't take place when Steve Mestovich was a young man. The story takes place when Steve Mestovich was an old man. So you've got to show me old. What does old look like? Yeah, oh, yeah. Now, talk, oh, please. Yeah! Yeah! You sound a little constipated, too. That's fine. That works for the story. Here's the deal. When he was an old man, he was proud of something, too. As an old man, he was proud of the fact that he had the most beautiful girl in the Steelmaking Valley. His daughter was the most beautiful girl in the Steelmaking Valley. Yeah, and I need someone to play your daughter. So I've got to find somebody out there to play your daughter. And while we're doing that, hey, Steve, you just want to sit up on this stool, Steve? Yeah, get up on that, Steve. Hey, so everybody can see you. Awesome. You creepy old man. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Oh, this is good. Would you come and help me? Come and help me. Yeah, come and help me. Yeah, it's good. It's fine. I don't care. Come over here. It's perfect. Good, 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 good. All right. So stand right here. What's your name? Dina. Hi, Dina. Now, Dina, you are now married. That's your dad. I know, it's kind of a freak show, but that's all right. You are the most beautiful girl in the Steelmaking Valley, so you got to play it, girl. Yeah, baby. Now, here was Steve Mestovich's problem. His daughter, Mary, was the most beautiful girl in the Steelmaking Valley, and she happened to be old enough to get married. And all the men who were steel workers in the Steelmaking Valley, they knew Mary was beautiful. Yeah, and they wanted to meet her and marry her. And that was, there was a problem. Because every day Mary would open up the front door to go get the newspaper that was laid at the front door. She'd open the door, there'd be a bunch of guys standing out there. And Steve Mestovich said, "Get in the house, Mary!" So she'd have to go in the house. But then later in the day, she'd go and open up the window to look at the flowers in the garden. There'd be a bunch of guys standing out there. Mary, close that window, Steve Mestovich would say? Well, this went on and on and on, and it was a problem. It was driving Steve Mesrovich crazy. Finally, Guy started showing up. I need someone to play a Guy showing up to meet Mary. Yeah? Good. Guys started showing up, and they wanted to meet Mary, so they would show up with stuff. Maybe they would bring a love letter. Go give her a love letter. Yeah. Oh, that's adorable. Okay, well, maybe they have candy. Give her candy. Yeah. Or maybe they give her a flower. Yeah. Or maybe they have that stuff. Maybe they bring like a farm animal, like a duck, or a pig, or a cat, or a I don't think they had velociraptors back then, but and if they didn't have any of that stuff, instead of giving her a present, they would try to kiss her full on the lips. Go ahead, baby. Holy mackerel! Let's give our suitor a big round of applause. Wow. Well, this bothered Steve. He didn't want people just walking up kissing his daughter full of the lips. That ain't right, man. And so he did two things. Number one, he told Mary, go to your room. Let's give her a very big round of applause. The next thing that happened is that Steve began to think. Let's give me your best thinking pose. He thought, and he thought, and he thought, until finally he came up with an idea. He decided that since he was a young man, and a very strong young man, he decided the person who was going to marry his daughter was going to be the strongest man in the Steelmaking Valley now. Let's send our Steve Mesrovich back to his seat. Give him a big round of applause! And so, he set the date. And on that date, they decided there was going to be a competition. Competition to decide who the strongest man in the Steelmaking Valley was now. Well, that day they had dancing, yeah? Lots of dancing out in the steel yard. And then they had food. Oh, they had pierogi. Oh, and the whisky. And all sorts of wonderful food. And after the food, and after the dancing and the music, there was the competition. In the steel yard, the steel workers placed 3 steel beams. The first steel beam was about 10 feet long and about as big around as a grapefruit. But the second steel beam was about 15 feet long and about as big around as a basketball. But the last steel beam was about 20 feet long and about as big around as a big man. And all those men from up and down the Steelmaking Valley, men from Pittsburgh to Youngstown, Johnstown, Monongahela, Blowing Ox, they all lined up behind that very first steel beam. They walked over to it. They leaned down over it. They wrapped their big strong hands around that big steel beam. And with all their might, they began to pull. Only 10 men lift up that first steel beam. And those 10 men in turn lined up behind that second steel beam that was 15 feet long and about as big around as a basketball. One after another, they walked over to it. They leaned down over it. They wrapped their big, strong arms around that big steel beam, and with all their might, they began to pull. But only 3 men could lift up that second steel beam. And those 3 men in turn lined up behind that last steel beam that was 20 feet long and about as big around as a big man. The first man who walked over to it, he was a big man. He was a strong man. He was a brawny man. He was a mighty man. He was a hairy man. Oh, he was very hairy. He had hair up and down his arms and hair in the back of his hands on hair and individual knuckles. He had an eyebrow that started right about here. All hair on his head. He had a beard that over his eyes, and wow! He had a tuft of hair growing over the top of his shirt from his chest. It was like he had a pet ferret down there or something. And as he walked, he would wiggle a little bit. His name was Joseph Dent, and he loved beautiful women. Oh, yeah. Joseph Dent walked over to that big steel beam. He leaned down over it. He spat into his hands. Some men do when they do hard work. He rubbed his hands together. He leaned down over that big steel beam. He wrapped his big, thick, strong, brawny, mighty, hairy arms around that big steel beam. And with all his might, he began to pull. And he pulled. And he pulled. And as he pulled, things started happening. Hey, did you ever see a really strong man lift up something heavy and you can see the veins kind of bulge out in their arms? Yeah. Yeah, you can almost hear those veins coming out. As he pulled and pulled and pulled, the sweat started running off his face, dripping off his nose and his chin. As he pulled and pulled and pulled, his face started turning different colors. All the different colors of the rainbow. Red, yellow, orange, purple, green, and green. As he pulled and pulled and pulled, he started to make those noises. Some men make him do hard work. It's not like this. Yeah! Whoa! As he pulled and pulled and pulled, and all of a sudden you heard it. The sound that echoed out through the whole steel-making valley, a sound that sounded something like this. Joseph Dent took his arms out from around that bar and he lifted his head up slowly. He had a kind of funny, pained look on his face. He went to stand up straight, and the only sound you could hear was this. And Joseph Dent walked off like this. Well, he popped his back out. I mean, you're just not supposed to walk over to something heavy and try to pick it up. You're going to hurt yourself. And the second man up in the competition, he knew better. He was a different kind of man. He was strong, but he was kind of thin and spindly. His name was Zig Gradzig. And he walked over to that big steel beam. He leaned down over it. He wrapped his spindly little arms around that big steel beam. He bent down on his knees to take pressure off his back. And with all his might, he began to pull. And he pulled, and he pulled, and he pulled. And he was so thin and tiny, the veins started popping out right away. They popped down on his forehead, popped down on his neck, popped down on his arm. One little tiny one popped down on his nose. As he pulled and pulled and pulled, the sweat's running off his face, dripping off his nose and his chin, running down his back. As he pulled and pulled and pulled, his face started turning different colors. All the different colors of the rainbow. Red, yellow, orange, purple, green, and aquamarine. As he pulled and pulled, and he started making those noises. Some men make him do hard work. It's something like this. A sound that echoed out to the whole steel-making valley, a sound that sounded something like this. Rip! Zig Gradzig took his arms out from around that steel beam, he lifted his head up slowly. He looked to his right. He looked to his left. And he realized that he was feeling a breeze that he never quite felt before. It's kind of like a tailwind. But all of a sudden, realization hit him in the face. He stood up slowly, he crossed his arms across his behind, and he walked out like this. You ever had your pants split? Here's a true story. My first job as an actor in Pittsburgh was doing a Shakespeare play. And I was playing the lead, the male lead who was in love with a beautiful girl. And I was supposed to jump on stage and throw her a rose, and she was up in a high tower. And so I jumped on stage, I threw up the rose, and my pants exploded! The audience went, oh! I went, ooh! And I never felt more embarrassed in my entire life. There's only one person left in the competition. And as that man walked up to that steel beam, you could hear a pin drop in that crowd of people there that day, because they all knew that the next guy, whose name was Pete Pusick, loved Mary. And that Mary Mesrovich loved Pete Pusick. Oh, and you're in love with somebody, that's a hard thing to hide. You know, you walk around all day kind of looking like this. And that's how Pete and Mary looked when they saw each other. Pete looked up the grandstands where Mary was sitting. She smiled at him. His face turned kind of purple. He walked over to that big steel beam, leaned down over, he wrapped his big, thick, strong arms around that big steel beam, and with all his might, he began to pull. And he pulled. And he pulled. And as he pulled, things started happening. The veins started popping out on his forehead. The veins started popping out on his arms and his legs and his neck as he pulled and pulled and pulled. His face started turning different colors, all the different colors of the rainbow. Red, yellow, orange, purple, green, and aquamarine. And as he pulled and pulled and pulled, he started to make those noises. Something making the do hard work. It sounded like this. Yo! Oh! As he pulled and pulled and pulled. He pulled so hard, you could almost hear his heart beating in his chest. Boom, 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 as he pulled and pulled and pulled, and all of a sudden you heard it. But it was a sound that was really hard to place. It was a sound like, oh, I know, you ever been outside, right, and it's rained a lot, and you're walking around, you've got your good tennis shoes on, and you step into a mud puddle. That's not the sound. As you pull your foot back out of the mud puddle, it makes a sound like this. Don't get ahead of me here. Because you see that old big steel beam that's been sitting in that field for 2 or 3 days, just settling down into the mud and the earth, and his old feet pulling on that steel beam with all his might, with all his strength, with all his soul. His big arms began to shake. When his big arms began to shake, that big steel beam began to shake. And when that big steel beam began to shake, he started to hear that noise. As he pulled and pulled and pulled, and then you could see it. A little tiny beam of light came beaming out from underneath that steel beam. Just a 1/4 inch worth. As he pulled and pulled, and then it turned into a 1/2 inch worth. And then it turned into 2 inches worth. And then it turned into 6 inches worth. And Pete threw his arms to the back of the air. The steel beam fell into the mud. Mary ran into his arms, and the audience went crazy. But that's when they heard another sound. So this sound they recognized right away. It was the sound that steel makes as it bubbles and boils in the furnace. And the sound wasn't coming from the steel mill. No, the sound was coming from up the road, and the sound was getting louder. And louder. And louder. Till they could see where that sound was coming from. That sound was coming from a man. But not just any man. A man who stood 9 feet tall. The people had never seen a 9-foot tall man. And he's walking towards them, giggling to himself like a crazy man. And when he got down to that crowd of people, they just parted down the middle. That big man walked through them like Moses walking through the Red Sea. And when he got down to those 3 steel beams, he walked over to Pete Pusick. He put his hand on Pete Pusick's chest, and he gently pushed him out of the way. And then with that same hand, he leaned down to that steel beam that was 20 feet long and about as big around as a big man. And he picked it up over his head. The people had never seen a man so strong in their whole entire lives. Before he picked up that steel beam, all their faces looked like this. But as soon as he picked up that steel beam, 1,000 faces all at once did this. And if that wasn't strong enough then, he just held that bar over his head. Not making a sound, when all of a sudden they heard another noise. As that bar began to bend and stretch in the middle. And when he had a thing sort of shaped like an upside down V, he took the wind into that steel beam and he started bringing it up on the other side. when he had a thing sort of shaped like this, he took the one end of that beam, he shoved it through the hole, and held up over his head one big old steel pretzel. The men had never seen a man so strong in their whole entire lives. Mary fainted. I mean, if you had to marry a giant like that, wouldn't you be scared too? She fainted. And the big man spoke. He said, don't you worry about that. I don't want to marry Mary. Let me introduce myself. My name is Joe Majorak. Well, he said his name, and people began to laugh. I don't know about you. If I saw a big man take a steel beam and bend it in the shape of a pretzel, do you think you would laugh at him? No. But you see, his names mean things. My name is Hartman, and Hartman is German for deer hunter. Manly. Well, Majorak means something too. In fact, it's pronounced Megaretz. And those people heard that name, Megaretz, and they began to laugh. You want to know why? Because Megaretz means donkey. Hee-haw! Hee-haw! Of course they laughed, because he was calling himself Joe Majorak, Joe the donkey. And again he spoke up. He said, don't you worry about that, he said, because all I want to do is work like a donkey and eat like a donkey. Three things happened that day. Number one, Pete and Mary got married. Number two, Steve Mestrovich found a job for Joe Majorak in the steel mill, because you need strong men to make steel. And number three, Steve Mestrovich found a place for Joe to stay in a local boarding house. Well, having Joe Majorak in your town was pretty amazing. Because true enough, he did eat like a donkey. Oh my gosh, he ate more food than you could ever imagine. But he also worked like a donkey. I don't know how you guys wake up every morning, but when I was a little boy, we had alarm clocks in my house. I lived in one room, I slept in one room with my brothers, Bob and Daryl. Yeah, Bob and Daryl. And my brother, Bob, I just like saying, Bob. He had one of those alarm clocks that when it went off, you'd hear, I hated that thing. When my brother Daryl woke up, he had an alarm clock that when it would go off, you'd hear music. You'd which was better. But I didn't have an alarm clock. I got to sleep in a little later because I was still in elementary school, and I'd be laying there, and I'd feel something get closer and closer and closer to my face as I slept, and I would hear this, Tim, wake up! And I would go, oh my gosh! My mother, that's how my mother woke me up every morning. I'm scarred still because of that. The people in the Steelmaking Valley, they had an alarm clock too. Because you see, every morning, as the sun began to peek over the horizon, they would hear a sound. They'd hear the sound, boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. And when it get louder, boom, 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 and louder, boom, 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 and louder, boom, 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 and things in your house began to shake, and your dog was bouncing on the floor, and the china was shaking in the closet. But all it was Joe Majorak walking down to work every morning. When he got to the steel mill, he'd go to furnace number 9, because that was his favorite furnace to work at, and he'd go to one end of that mill, he'd grab some iron ore. Iron ore is just rock that has iron in it. He'd grab a good 2 tons of that stuff, pick it up over his head. Oh yeah. And then he'd go to the place in the middle where they kept a scrap iron. Scrap iron are just like iron things that are broken, and so they remelt them to make steel. He made on them, he'd grab a good 8 tons of that stuff, pick it up over his head. Oh, baby. And And then he'd go over to furnace number 9 and he'd dump all that stuff in. What happens next is really fun to watch. When I was a little boy, my dad would take us into the steel mill, and you could stand around the furnace and you could watch what would happen. All that stuff in there started out being kind of brown in color, but then it would start turning kind of orangish in the middle and red, and then it would go yellow, and then it would go white. And when all that stuff went white hot, it began to ooze down, melt down in sort of a bubbly, boily, gooey, gloppy, steely, yucky mess. Blah. When it's that hot, you don't want to get too close to it. You could always find pebbles around the bottom of the furnace. You could take a pebble and throw it into that molten steel, and even before that little pebble would hit the surface of the molten steel, it would explode, because that's how hot it was. Did that heat bother Joe Mazurak? No. He'd take a big old hand, he'd dip it in that molten steel, he'd stir it around. Didn't even sweat. He said, you know, this kind of tickles. And as that stuff began to cool down to be like a consistency of Play-Doh, he'd grab a handful of that stuff, hold it up over his head, squeeze his hand into a fist, and out between his fingers would come oozing perfect steel beams. Because true to his word, Joe Mazurak worked like a donkey. The steelworkers had no idea how this happened. How could he do these things? And so all the steelworkers came around him one day, and gathered around and said, Hey, Joe, how do you do this? And Joe did something weird. He unbuttoned his shirt down halfway. He asked all the steelworkers to walk up one at a time and tap on his chest. I know, if you tap on your chest, it makes sort of a thuddy sound. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, good, man. Tarzan, love it. But when you tapped on Joe Mazurak's chest, it made a completely different sound. It sounded like this. Bong. How is this possible, they said? And Joe sat down. He gathered all the steelworkers around him like we're sitting here right now. And he said very softly and slowly, I was born in the old country. Who was my mother? My mother was Mother Earth herself. For you see, I am a man who is made of steel. Well, things went great in the steelmaking valley for quite some time with this big man making steel. And in fact, Joe Mazurak worked so hard, he made so much steel that they couldn't keep up with selling it. They had so much steel they couldn't sell it all. And so one day the man who owned the steel mill came for a visit. He gathered all the men together and said, boys, we've got a problem there, boys. You see, we've made too much steel there, boys, and we can't sell it all. And if we can't sell it all, I'm afraid you boys are going to be out of work for a while. Well, today, if somebody loses their job, you know, the government can take care of people for a while. But back then, if you lost your job 100 years ago, was there anyone who could take care of you then? Not really. And so those men went home that day with their heads bowed low and their lunch pails in their hands and their hats in their other hand, because they'd have to tell their families they wouldn't have any money. If they looked back into the mill, they would have seen old Joe standing there, the big rusty tear dripping down his big steel cheek. He put his friends out of work. Being strong wasn't going to help anybody. And so Joe climbed up into old furnace number 9, because that's where he liked to work the most. And sometimes he would sit there when they weren't making steel just to gather his thoughts. 1 week went by. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And just as things were getting desperate, people began to starve. They didn't have any food. They didn't have any money. What were they going to do? Word went out that they'd sold enough of the steel that they could have their jobs back. And boy, the guys came running back, ready to get to work. And when they got to the steel mill, who did they think of? They thought of Joe. And so they started calling for him. Hey, Joe! You over here, Joe? But he wasn't there. So they went to the other side of the mill. Hey, Joe!
Go over here. And that's when they heard it. That same sound they'd heard on the very first day. That rumbling, tumbling, bubbling, boiling sound that steel makes as it bubbles and boils in the furnace. And they followed that sound to old furnace number 9. Some of the men looked around the bottom. Some of them climbed up and looked from the catwalks down below. And what they saw in that furnace was molten steel just bubbling and boiling almost over the sides of the furnace itself. And floating on the top of that white-hot steel was the white-hot head of Joe Majorak. Joe, they said, get out of there, you're going to kill yourself. And Joe said, don't worry about me. I was sitting in this furnace trying to think of a way to help you. And as I sat here, I began to melt. And when I began to melt, I got an idea. When I am all melted down, I want you to take the steel from me, and I want you to pour it out into steel beams. And then I want you to tear down this old steel mill, and I want you to make a bigger steel mill, a better steel mill, a mill that will give jobs to you and your children for years and years to come. Joe said, thank you. Joe said, goodbye. And the head of Joe Majorak dipped beneath the surface of that white-hot steel. And that bubbling, boiling sound was the only sound you'd hear. The men didn't know what to do. Big, strong men, tears running down their cheeks. Their friend was gone. And finally, Steve Messerich spoke up. He said, hey, we're going to do what he said. And so they tore down that old steel mill, and they poured out the steel from Joe Majorak, and they built a new steel mill, a better steel mill that gave jobs to them and their children for years to come. The next year, they had another strongman competition. But Steve didn't have any more daughters. So the winner of that contest, he got to tend the fires at old furnace number 9. The furnace that Joe Majorak gave up everything for all his friends. Still made great. Pittsburgh town's a smoky old town. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh town's a smoky old town. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh town's a smoky old town. If you listen real close, you'll hear a bubbling sound. Pittsburgh. Oh yeah, Pittsburgh. The end.
All right, this is your summer reading quiz. First of all, everybody here is registered for summer reading, yes? Raise your hand if you signed up for summer reading. Good, okay, here's the first question. What happens when you get a bingo? What happens when you earn a bingo on your bingo card? You get a prize. What is that prize in?
A box.
A mystery bag. Right? You don't know what's inside until you open it. That's why we call it a mystery. But if you played and you won bingo, you're guaranteed something. You're going to get a prize. Any tweens and teens in here? Allie? Yes? How are you? Olivia, right? Good. What do you get if you earn a bingo? Mystery envelope, which can contain anything from a free ice cream cone to a $25 Nike gift card. So we got some fabulous prizes for just playing bingo. On top of that, on top of playing bingo, what else can you do at the library during the summer? What else can you do? What else can you sign up for? Do you know? Any guesses? What can you sign up for? Yes, in the back. Lego Mania, yes, which is one of our awesome programs. Right? So we have a whole slew of programs for you to sign up for, and you too can do that tonight while you're here. Now, since all of you, by the way, you did a great job on the quiz. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's it. It was 3 questions. It was an easy one. While you're here, since you all signed up for summer reading, we're going to do this. We're going to give away a raffle prize. We have a nice set of books that we're going to raffle off to a lucky winner. This is our Out of the Lab series, nice set of 6 hardback books. They are great. I'd say they're about a 2nd, 3rd grade reading level. I haven't looked at them in a while. I would say 3rd grade. So even if you're younger, that's something that you can grow into. It's a really nice set to keep for a while and just wait. And if you're older, well then maybe you can share them with a younger sibling. Okay, so here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to have Mr. Al Mazing. Pick a number between 1 and 45, if you wouldn't mind.
34.
34. Whoever's our 34th registrant tonight will get this set of Out of the Lab books. So, can we... All right, so Miss Dawn's going to be our runner, number 34. We'll just sit tight, and we will announce that shortly. While we wait, does anybody have any questions for me about summer reading? Do you have a question? Yes, come on up. First of all, tell me your name. Jack. Hi, Jack.
My question is, books are printed out of paper with words.
That's true.
Yeah, but not that many pictures. So I'm wondering, why not that many chapter books have not that many pictures?
Well, that's an excellent question, Jack. What are you used to reading? Pictures, books with lots of pictures, or books with lots of words? What have you been reading lately?
Both.
Awesome. High five. Well, I shouldn't tell you how old I am. Well, I'm 38 years old, and I still read both. I love picture books, and I love chapter books. Right on. I can tell you why. As you grow older and you become a better reader, then you can read more words and you can have more words on a page. You don't need to fill it with as many pictures. Does that make sense? Jack, I think you already know that, right? But you can still enjoy a picture book no matter how old you are. But as you get older, you can start reading more words, so you want to start reading some chapter books too. Awesome question. Does anybody else have a question for me? You do? Come on up. It's okay, we'll say hi. What's your name?
Cece.
Cece, I love that name. What's your question for me, Cece?
Equestria girls are kind of pretty and nice.
Say that one more time. You have what that's pretty and nice?
Equestria girls.
A question? Yeah? Turn around so you can tell our audience. Tell our audience what your question is.
Equestria girls are nice and pretty.
Nice and pretty. That's a great job. Did you sign up for summer reading today? Give me a high five. I hope you have fun playing bingo. I can't wait to see you a lot in the library. Okay, thanks, Cece. All right, I think we might be ready for our winner. Miss Beth, do we have our winner yet? Fabulous. Do we have the winner, number 34? Oh, okay, I thought Miss Dawn was sending you. I'm sorry. Only 1 in 20? We have more than 20 registrants. Okay, can you pick a new number for us, Mr. Al?
28.
One between 1 and 20.
4.
4. All right, let's go see who number 4 was. And while Dawn checks that, I think we do have time for one more question. Yes, come on up in the back. Come on up. You are a regular library patron. I see you in here all the time. Remind me of your name.
I'm Colby O'Connor.
Colby, that's right. High five, Colby. What's your question tonight? Turn around and talk to the camera and to the audience.
How do robots work?
Ooh, that's a good one. How do robots work? Wow, that's a very scientific one that we might not have time to answer right now, Colby. But you should definitely sign up for some of our cool science programs, right? And you should definitely check some books out about robotics because you can find the answer in a book, right? Awesome. So do I. They are fascinating, but they're pretty complex too sometimes. So great question that we should research for you. We will check out some robot books for you later on this evening. All right, Miss Dawn is back with our winner. Gotcha. So our winner is Avery Mole. Is Avery Mole here? Mole, M-O-U-L? Not present, but that's okay. We decided that winner need not be present. We will call Avery later on or tomorrow morning.